now listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. In case you haven't realised, I am today joined by the king of Arsenal podcasting. It is Arseblog's Andrew. He is the reason that we all started doing this. Andrew, you are responsible for all of these Arsenal podcasts everywhere, but huge thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
My pleasure, and my apologies to the wider society as a whole for inflicting all these podcasts on the world. I didn't know it was going to happen like that.
Yeah, it's absolutely great to have you on the show. Big thanks for coming on. And as I said before we started recording, we're going to have a chat about Gabriel today. You were a centre half back in your day, and I thought it would be perfect to pick your brains on his development, where he's gone, and in my opinion, to getting to the level he's at now as one of the world's best. I just thought I'd share this image. One of his first games for Arsenal was actually at Old Trafford 5 years ago, and ironically in a kit very similar to the one that we played in at the weekend. And when you compare it to where he's at now and the teammates that he has around him, on that day 5 years ago, he played with Rob Holding at centre-back. Here we are now with two of the best centre-backs in the world side by side. But just give me your thoughts on Gabriel overall, because for me, he is the cornerstone of our team in terms of his just pure passion and defensive abilities.
Sure. I guess the first thing to say is that, while I was a centre half, I was, never anywhere near as good as Gabriel is. So listen, I think what we've seen is fascinating, really. When he came over from France first, I think he is and remains a very emotional guy, but maybe there was a sort of impetuousness to his game when he was younger that over the course of his Arsenal career so far, we have seen develop into a much more channeled way of playing the game and dealing with the opposition and dealing with situations. I think he is one of the best central defenders in the world right now. I don't think there's a club in Europe or anywhere else in the world that wouldn't take him. If he was available tomorrow, there would be a queue out the door. Thankfully, he has signed a new contract. And I know we're going to talk about him, specifically, but I do think there is something that we need to look at as well. This is like the third full season now with him alongside William Saliba. I think he makes Saliba better, and I think Saliba makes him better as well. I think that is something worth acknowledging if we are going to delve into him specifically. I do think there's something to be said for that partnership being something a little bit special.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're completely right with that, because we often talk about partnerships throughout the Premier League era. You've got Adams and Keown, Pallister and Bruce, right through to like Terry Carvalho, Vidic and Ferdinand, and so on and so on. And they are very much that modern partnership. But with Saliba, we saw last year, he really kind of stepped up when Gabriel went out, and he really marshaled Kiwior towards the end of the season. But when the two of them are together, we do see that elevated kind of status at the back where teams don't want to come at us. The only player that I've really seen shaking them was Isaac last season, where they didn't like defending against him. But in terms of confidence with them at the back and them together this season, and Gabriel starting to look quite sharp very, very quickly, how confident are you that we've got the tools to really kickstart and go forward as a title challenger?
Well, I think the evidence was there on Sunday, where Arsenal's performance, I think, has been under a lot of scrutiny. And people said it was a poor performance. And I think it was a poor performance from an attacking perspective. We really didn't create a great deal. We didn't dominate midfield the way you would have liked with the players we had versus the players that they had. But we got a goal and we won the game because of our defense, being solid, and United being unable to really find a way through. I know they had a couple of moments here or there, but there was, the chances that they had were not like gilt-edged chances. I don't think. Maybe the one that springs to mind where we fell maybe just a little bit short defensively was when Cunha broke through all the way through. He came through midfield and sort of bobbled his way through two or three defenders, which really doesn't happen. His shot at the end was quite tame, but beyond that, they didn't pull Arsenal apart. There was a header from Mbuemo in the second half, which David Raya made a very good save from Cunha in the first half. But beyond that, it's not like they were hammering down the door, and that is in large part because of the defensive platform that we have. So I think on a day where you don't attack well, and on a day where it doesn't come together for you in wide areas and up front, if you can get a goal from a set piece and pull out a classic 1-0 to the Arsenal, you stand a good chance of winning a game. And you also, over the course of a season, stand a good chance of being in a title race and being competitive all the way to May, because you have that defensive solidity, which I think has been part of how good Arsenal have been over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, well, you mentioned set pieces. That was something that I had planned to discuss. We know how good Gabriel is from them. So just sharing the goal against City, just because why not? And it was one that we saw when he was out. We did see our set piece threat really diminish. And the minute he's back in the team, we're scoring from corners again. Nicolas Jover was kind of questioned last season. Was his whole plan just put it on Gabriel's head? So what are your thoughts on that? Because having a 6'3" absolute dynamite centre back that wants to win the ball and will power his way into the box is an absolute weapon that you have to use.
Sure. I mean, I think what Gabriel gives you is not just 6'3", but 6'3" and presence. And not just presence in the opposition box, presence in our box as well. I think we're better defensively from set pieces when he's in the team. And I think clearly he is such a threat from set pieces. There are two benefits. Obviously, one is that he can score goals. And the other one is that I think maybe the opposition sometimes get a bit focused on him, which allows others to cause damage and cause threat in the opposition box. You know, they're so focused on Gabriel. I don't think it was coincidence last season. The way that we set up from set pieces was very often Gabriel by the penalty spot. You know, everyone else is sort of in and around the goalkeeper or the 6-yard box or the back post, as we saw Arsenal putting men on the back post. But Gabriel was sort of on his own just to sort of, I don't know, undermine the opposition, make them nervous, you know, and they have a guy looking at him and he doesn't know which way he's going to, is he going to go left? Is he going to go right? Is he just going to plow straight down the middle? I think he causes a kind of chaos in the opposition box, which we can benefit from through him and through others as well. So, yeah, listen, I don't think there's been a centre half better at scoring goals in the Premier League for a long, long time. Thomas Vermaelen got some, but if you remember, a lot of those were kind of long shots. He was quite an interesting threat in that sense. But Gabriel is a pure, you know, between the penalty spot and the goal line, there's nobody better in the world, I don't think.
Yeah, and what do you make of our new set piece routine with the 5 players at the edge of the box, and it gives them that distance to really kind of build up that bit of power and pace before they reach the ball?
I think interesting, if only because there's only so many things you can do from a set piece. Line up at the back post, make a run from back post to front post, maybe go from front post to back post, put everybody in. You know, there's a limited amount of things that you can do, and this was certainly different. If you looked at the way the spacing of the players, they were sort of about 2 yards apart, each of them about 2 yards apart, and they made a run into the box. And maybe if we hadn't scored from there, you might ask if we should have got a penalty because of the way that Cunha held on to Martin Zubamendi. But I do think, you know, you do need a bit of variety because teams work things out and opposition analysts work things out, and the delivery is usually an in-swinging delivery. Therefore, it demands or informs a certain kind of run from the players that we have. So yeah, it was something a little bit different, but I don't really know what else you can do beyond making them run from deeper or from a different side of the box. You know, how the opposition try and manage that. We saw a couple of times last season, didn't we, where they would leave players upfield. So you're having to deal with, you know, 3 attackers. So you've got to leave 3 defenders at least there. That's a way of trying to counter what Arsenal have been good at. But we'll see how it develops over the course of the season. I think set pieces will be something we're very strong at. We're naturally very good at those. I think enough work goes into them to make us a real threat. And maybe the first goal that we scored this season coming from a set piece will just put the jitters up the opposition defenders, because we weren't quite as threatening towards the end of last season. But as you say, Gabriel is now back. We've got a goal. We've won a game with a set piece. and everyone's going to be thinking, oh no, we're going to have to work hard here to stop Arsenal.
Yeah, and do you have any worries about the new kind of rules about grappling in the box and trying to, for the officials to try and alleviate any contact in football whatsoever?
Yes, I do actually. Because I don't quite know how it's going to work, because I think one referee could look at something and think, well, the defender is holding the attacker. And another referee could say, well, the attacker is holding the defender. And usually it is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, isn't it? You know, it's a 50-50 thing. They're both at each other. So where do you find the line on that? And I worry that it will cause inconsistency in decision making, which I think is the thing that for football fans, it really drives them mad. You know, if you see in one game that's a penalty, in another game that's a free kick, is it only going to be what the referee sees? Or is the referee going to be asked to go and look at things that VAR can see, that in that sort of 2 or 3 second of a melee when players are hurtling into the box, the referee can't see everything, but VAR will be able to see things that the referee doesn't. So is VAR going to then start officiating games? Are we going to get the referee being told, you need to go have a look at this because you haven't seen it? Is it clear and obvious? All of that nonsense. I do have a big worry that they're opening a Pandora's box here that we might regret. The question, of course, is like, do we just let players go at each other in the penalty area and let them hold and let them pull and let them foul each other? Is that something we would like to see eradicated from the game? Maybe. But if the consequence of trying to do that is real inconsistency in decision making, then I'm not sure it's worth it. So we'll have to see how it plays out. We'll have to see how it plays out over the course of the season. And we need a bit more. We don't have much of a sample size as to how they're going to police this yet. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and I think it's inevitable that it's going to happen to us at some point, that we get something chalked off as a result of this. And you're right, it's so subjective. But just on the kind of the Gabriel thing, and kind of going back further down the pitch, we know about his box threat, we know about his ability with set pieces, but one of the big improvements in his game over the years has been his ability on the ball. When he arrived, I thought he was fine on the ball, but he did have that tendency to have a loose touch, and his second touch is a tackle, and then suddenly we're under pressure. That's something that we've seen tighten up a lot. And interestingly, you mentioned Saliba at the start. Saliba, by contrast, is a smooth technician up and down the park. There does seem to be something with Saliba beside him. Gabriel seems calmer when it comes to that first touch, and we see the repetition more. But as a pure footballer, how have you kind of appreciated his growth over the last few years? Because it's become a big part of our ability to progress the ball up the park.
Well, I think generally speaking, we have extremely technically proficient players. You look at the pass completion statistics between Gabriel and Saliba, they're usually 90% thereabouts, particularly in a game we dominate. I thought it was interesting actually this weekend when you looked at the pass completion statistics from the Manchester United game, they were low for certain players. You know, players are below where you would expect them to be. And Gabriel was actually one of those where his pass completion was not great. I think it's fair to say he's probably a bit rusty. You know, he hasn't played since April. And I think the defensive effort he put in was fantastic. It is interesting, I suppose, in the context of what we think or hope that Arsenal might do this season in terms of getting the ball forward more quickly, looking for players in space, maybe looking for more balls over the top for Gyökeres, for example, to run onto, or even Saka, Martinelli, whoever's playing in those wide positions. I do think there is Mikel Arteta doesn't want speculative football. He doesn't want players just like hoofing the ball long over the top in the vain hope that somebody might get there. I think it's about picking and choosing your moments in that sense. But there's no question that since he arrived, technically he has improved, with the ball at his feet. His decision making is better. His close control is better. He is, for me, aligned with players like Saliba, like Declan Rice, maybe even Martin Zubimendi, as that kind of quality player on the ball who rarely gives it away, and certainly not these days does not give it away in dangerous areas.
Yeah, and just on that, in terms of hoofing the ball up the park, because that was something that I wanted to get on to. Against Athletic Club, we noticed a lot of big switches out to Saka very early. And I previewed the United game with Adrian Clark, and one of the things that we thought we would see more of was big switches out to our wingers early. In actual fact, it was United that killed us with the big switches and not the other way around. But Gabriel and Declan Rice, in my opinion, and possibly Kiwior, are the best long passers in our team. They're very, very good with those switches. Given that there's a clear desire to get the ball moving forward faster and into our attacker's path, do you think that's a weapon that we will start to utilize more with Gabriel this season?
Maybe. Again, it's sort of sample size is really small. I don't think we can really judge too much on what the performance was like at Old Trafford, because it didn't feel very Arsenal. You expect to go to Old Trafford and have to defend, and you expect to sort of the game to go a bit to and fro. We didn't really have any dominant period of possession. I remember when we went there last season back in March, maybe, in that first half, we absolutely played them off the park. They couldn't get near the ball. And this was completely at odds with that. And I think probably Mikel Arteta was looking for something a bit more like that performance from March. But obviously it didn't transpire that way. So it's hard to know. I think we're more likely, just my opinion, we're probably more likely to see the long passing come from central midfielders where Gabriel might facilitate Zubimendi or Rice, depending on who is in that deep lying position. I think those switches are more likely to come from that player because it gives you a bit more security when you're making those passes, because they're not always easy. Zubimendi's really good. Rice has been excellent at that throughout his career. That long diagonal switch which he played at West Ham pretty much all the time, but was told at Arsenal, no, that's not how we're doing it. So I think it's probably more likely to come from the midfielders than Gabriel or even Saliba, because I think you make that pass more risky if you're playing it from 10, 15 yards further back.
Yeah, and just with the risk versus reward, this is something that we've seen over the last few years at Arsenal. 22, 23, it was high risk, high reward. 23, 24, we went into a more conservative approach, but there was still that risk versus reward. It felt last year it was zero risk. Let's try and basically be as compact as possible, play to the player strengths that we've got because we don't have any. And this year, it feels like there's a bit of that coming back. But one of the area that we do always seem to take a bit more risk from is left back and our keeper. So on Saturday, David Raya, so I've got a screen grab here of the incident. We saw it first. So the first one, he gets the ball, and you can see he has the ball. He can play that pass straight across the face of goal, out to the fullback, Ben White in this instance, but he chooses to turn inside and play it to Gabriel. So you see the second one, he's been closed down and he's put under a lot of pressure and almost gives away a penalty here. But do you feel that at times that our play out from the back puts both of our centre backs under a lot of pressure? And whilst they can deal with it, there are times that we need to get smarter at the back, especially when we've just taken the lead.
Hindsight is always 20/20 in situations like that. Like if you go back to that first screenshot, I don't know if you can bring it up again, but if you look at that first one, yes, the pass is on to Ben White there, but you have the United player who could very quickly close Ben White down in that situation as well. So there's always going to be an element of risk when you play it out from the back. Where I where I most often see us have an area of concern is if we're playing a ball vertically out of that situation. So if Raya, let's say, is on his penalty spot and he's looking for the pass there, I think that's Martin Ødegaard coming in. That often is where we end up in trouble, because that pass has to be perfect. It has to be perfect because Ødegaard has got a guy coming up behind him. There's a guy outside him. I just think it's part and parcel of playing out from the back. Like, you can reduce the risk by hoofing the ball high up the pitch, but you almost always give the ball away, or you find it very difficult to retain possession when you're you're hitting it towards players who are looking at play, you know, and our players are trying to deal with that with their back to goal. So in this instance, I think Raya actually got a little bit lucky. It was one of those where if there was just marginally more contact, there might have been a penalty awarded, but that is what we ask him to do. That is how we ask him to play. And I think, you know, we've seen it a couple of times where it hasn't necessarily paid off, but on this occasion we got away with it. And I think we got the ball up the line. I can't quite remember what happened there, but yeah, I don't know what the option is, what the safe option is there. Maybe it is a pass to Ben White and he moves it quickly out to the right-hand side. But it's just part of Raya's game. It's part of how Raya is coached and how this team is going to play. I mean, we talk about the left back, and in that instance, Calafiori is completely marked as well. So I don't really know what Raya. Well, he could have played the safe-ish one to Ben White, but look, he chose the other option, and it's just something we're going to have to live with.
Yeah, and the final topic on Gabriel I wanted to pick your brains on is leadership. So Tony Adams has obviously had his say on the armband, and I thought it was interesting because everyone is obsessed with Declan Rice being Arsenal's new captain, but actually I'm more than fine with Ødegaard as our captain. I think he's a great leader on the pitch. But I also look at Gabriel, and I always find it interesting that whenever we hear this Declan Rice argument, Gabriel's name is never mentioned, but he's part of the leadership group, and you can see him on the pitch. He's one of the most vocal players. He organizes, he motivates, he does everything that you would want the captain doing, but he's not wearing the armband. So in your opinion, where does the armband debate lie? Is it still even a thing, or is this something that is a predated thing that is being just dragged up time and time again?
I think there is, you know, traditionally a very English view of a captain and what a captain should be, and I think that's encapsulated by Tony Adams. That is the archetypal English/British captain. Brilliant player, real warrior, real leader. All of those qualities are, I think, viewed with, you know, by a lot of football fans and maybe a lot of English football fans. I don't want to sort of generalize too much, but I think that they're the qualities they look for in the captain. I think the game has moved on to the extent where if Declan Rice needs a piece of cloth on his arm to be a leader on the pitch for Arsenal, something's wrong, right? He can still be a leader. He can still shout. He can still cajole. He can still talk to people and lead by example and show that kind of bulldog spirit or whatever you want to call it, right? It's there for him to do that. But Martin Ødegaard equally has been the captain for 3 years at Arsenal now. Maybe more. Is it more?
3, yeah.
So we've had 2 title challenges under Martin Ødegaard, and we've had like one season last season where we got to the semi-finals of the Champions League with Ødegaard as our captain. I don't think Ødegaard being our captain is the thing that's stopping us winning anything. You know, and there are leaders all over the pitch. Gabriel is one of them as well. Saliba, Saka. You know, there's experienced players in this team who can demonstrate leadership qualities, and they don't need to be wearing an armband to do it. I think it's quite a reductive argument to say that the difference between Arsenal winning a title and not is Declan Rice having an armband. I don't believe that. I just don't, with all due respect to Tony Adams, who was a brilliant captain for us and who demonstrated all of the qualities that you needed back then. I think the game is different now. I think the players are different now. People are different now. The world moves on, and what was effective 25 years ago might not necessarily be effective now, or it doesn't mean, or it means you can do things differently and still be effective. So, listen, I'm happy for and always have been, but generally have been with the idea that collective leadership is the way to go. Like if you are, here's an example. Back when we suffered that defeat, it was a draw at Birmingham, if you remember the day that Eduardo got injured. It was a, you know, horrible day, obviously. And it was in an era where people looked to their captain for leadership and guidance. And our captain sat down on the pitch, and that was not what a captain should do. Is there a correlation? Is there a connection between the way William Gallas behaved that day and what happened after that Eduardo incident? Maybe the team collectively was traumatized by what happened to Eduardo, and that would be understandable. But if in that context and in that era, you are looking to one man to lead the team and to rally the troops, we didn't have that guy. Whereas I think now, and fingers crossed, obviously nothing like that happens to any of our players again, or any player really. Do you think we'd be better placed to deal with that if we have Rice as a leader, Gabriel as a leader, Ødegaard as a leader, Saka as a leader, William Saliba as a leader, all the experience? But I think we would. But we were a young team back then, and Arsene Wenger, for whatever reason, thought that William Gallas was a good captain, and he wasn't. And that's a pitfall I think you need to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think, as you mentioned, the players there, their experience, their leaders, they're all warriors that you trust to go out on the pitch and represent the club effectively. And we've had years where we didn't have that. The Arsenal soft underbelly. Now we're physical, we can handle ourselves, and we're being criticised. So it's just a nice position to be in, that you've got this almost 5, 6, 7 leaders within the squad, and we can call upon them when we need them. But I think that's a great place to wrap it up there about Gabriel. Andrew, big thanks for coming on. Could you just give us a bit more information on where people can find you for anyone that has been living under a rock for the last 25 years?
Well, arsblog.com is where you'll find everything. We have our news site, our podcasts. You can find information about our Patreon and everything else that we do. So, simple, old-fashioned website, arsblog.com. Or you can get the app, by the way, for iOS or for Android. We have an Arsblog app, so you can download that. But yeah, that's where I am, and that's where hopefully we'll be throughout this successful season to come.
Yeah, and of course the Arscast as well. So I would highly recommend anyone that hasn't read or listened, go and check it out. And if you've enjoyed this show, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and please drop a comment and tell us what you think about Gabriel, Arsenal's leadership, and where we're going this season. Thank you, guys. We'll see you again very soon.